bulk of the food that they distributed was a kind of unidentifiable meat product that was
Mystery
probably,
meat.
I'm willing to say a few months past the spoiling date.
It was intended to be bologna at one point.
In between two pieces of hard stale bread.
Stale white bread, yeah.
They also distributed a number of cheese sandwiches, and that was about it on Pier 57.
Well, the best food they gave us was apples and oranges. I chose not to eat the oranges because it required, really touching the food, and my hands were covered with this black grit and with grime, oily stuff. Whereas with an apple, you can just grab it at either pull. I liked the fruit, the fact that we were eating some nutritious food, but these stale white bread sandwiches were just deplorable. I couldn't even hold them down. And there wasn't enough water. There was one water cooler for maybe 100, 200 people, and not enough cups.
That's correct.
And the water would keep running out, or people would use the water to wash their hands, so it would be used up faster than you'd expect. And there was just a combination of all those factors: the food, the water, the smell, the lack of sleep. I didn't even want to sit down on the surface. I continued to walk as long as I could until 2 or 3 in the morning, but after a while I had to sit down. I had to lie down and try to sleep.
Well, Mike, you were describing to me that you were, for quite a while when you arrived there, you were bound up still with other people.
One aspect that was particularly humiliating, because while we were in this cage that had razor wire 10 feet up in the air, we had to have these plastic zip tie shackles connecting our hands behind our backs. And there was no reasonable explanation for this. The fact is we were in their custody, and there was no way that we could get out of the cage even if we were unbound. The only way to get those shackles to be removed was to stand in line for an hour or more and wait your turn to use the 4 porta potties.
So there were 4 porta potties for how many people?
I would guess about 500 people at any given time. I was brought into the facility at about 9 o'clock, stayed there until noon the next day, and people were coming in and out. There were bus loads coming from different parts of the city, all of them looking as dazed and confused as we were, but the ones who had been there longer were like shaking their heads like, these people have to go up behind us, so they're going to stay even longer.
Right. Where men and women were together?
Initially, yes.
So 500 men and women together with 4 porta potties.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, did everybody manage to get to the John when they wanted to, or
I can only speak for myself.
I think one has to ask.
But I wasn't aware of any incidents, but it was a deplorable situation. I would have probably, I basically tried to keep to myself and just kind of meditate on my situation and try to get the internal emotional strength to deal with it. And I couldn't pay attention much to the struggles that other people were going through.
Right, and now, in order to get your shackles taken off,
Yes, we had to stand in line. Eventually, half the people were free, and half the people had these things, binding their hands behind their backs. Again, it's ridiculous. There was no reason for that situation to occur, and those bindings did bite into my wrists. I had scars for about a week after the detainment.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can speak to that as well. I have nerve damage in my left hand from these cuffs that they put on us. And they were not very kind about them. And I complained to them that and it was legitimate, I had a shoulder condition which caused my shoulder to come out of the joint every time you pull it behind me. And I had asked them very kindly, you can cuff me, but if you cuff me from the back, you're going to pull my shoulder out. They could have cared less. And it wasn't only until they pulled my arm behind me and it went out of joint that they actually realized that I was going to raise, holy hell about it. And they actually recuffed me in the front.
Right. Now, do you feel like you were treated like a criminal?
We were treated like, I would say criminals got better consideration, because when we got to central booking, the criminals were actually whisked through the booking process a lot faster than we were.
Well, how long did it take you to be booked?
Well, there was 24 hours where we were on Pier 57, and that was just a containment facility. It was just like all of us being thrown into a pen, and we were overcrowded, and that was when we were all filthy and covered in filth and sick and dealing with all the fumes and the chemicals, I'm almost willing to say that central booking was worse because there were the same amount of people, but the space that we occupied had been shrunk by about 90%.
It's true. There was
So
extreme
you have
overcrowding.
holding cells that were designed for maybe 10 people, maybe 20 on a busy day, and there were 60 and 70 men stuck into each one of them.
What was the attitude of the cops?
They could have cared less. It was only until about the last 6 hours, and I don't know, I can't say whether or not this was because of information coming down the police chain that said, oh, the Supreme Court's onto this, oh, we might have to let these guys go, oh, there's a lot of complaints, better be nice. But it was only until about the last 6 hours that the police even started expressing any sort of humanity. And it was at that last phase in central booking where some of them actually started approaching us and saying, we feel bad about what's happening to you guys. We agree with what you're doing. We don't think this is right. But for every one that would say that, there was 10 that would scream, get a job, you frickin' dirtbag hippies. Why don't you get the hell out of my city? Open your mouth again and you'll be here to Christmas, so on and so on and so on.
Right.
And I just kind of chalked all of that up to the, general mental and emotional harassment that they were giving us. But I can say genuinely that there were quite a few of them that did not agree with what was going on.
So I'd like to broaden the discussion a little bit because you feel you were treated worse than a criminal, and I think, Mike, you feel the same way.
Absolutely.
How do you now, if you're a political protester exercising your right to protected protest speech, and an activist, are you now a terrorist?
Well, it's interesting.
Well, under the Patriot Act, we can easily be construed as domestic terrorists. I think that's an important distinction that people need to make. And they need to understand that the legislation that exists within the Patriot Act permits our government to label anyone who dissents against them as domestic terrorists. In fact, there was an argument made that merely by protesting and by engaging in civil disobedience during the week, we were actually engaging in terrorism because we were, quote, making it easier for terrorists to attack us because the police had to divert their attentions elsewhere. I mean, this is kind of fatuous logic that leads to such things as the McCarthyism and the Red Scare and ridiculous political maneuvers that are used to quash any type of dissent or any type of public opinion that doesn't fit in with the agenda of the ruling powers.